This is Janus Dispatch. Architecture over narrative. The $11 million standoff. 5 actors at Flair's June 4th Crossroads. Section 1. The ticking $11 million bomb. On Flair, the total value locked screens red like calm. Pools are deep. Numbers climb. Voices grow louder. The depth looks structural. It is not. It is bought. Rewards FLR or rFLR. Incentives subsidize the position. A good share of what looks like committed liquidity is actually mercenary capital. It is renting the asset where the reward is highest, ready to move the moment the reward thins. Nowhere is this clearer than in stXRP on Spectra. $10.64 million sits in a single pool with a single maturity. June 4th, 2026. The Firelight stXRP vault is nearly maxed. $85.66 million of an $86.04 million cap, equal to 59.91 of 60.17 million FXRP filled. The tap is open. The tank is full. The clock is running. The illusion is APY. Base APY on Spectra for stXRP sits at 0%. The rest is rFLR subsidy plus Firelight Points, a promise without a binding tokenomics mechanic. Phase 2, the activation of an operational yield underneath, has not shipped. As of today, the system runs on incentives, not on returns. On June 4th, $11 million has to find a new home. 5 actors decide where it goes, what tone the rest of the curve takes, and whether the May coordination claim survives contact with the on-chain record. Section 2. 5 actors at the table. Player 1. Gamey Labs, the hostage holder. Gamey Labs Flair XRP Yield Prime MetaVault holds $5,037,608 of Saint XRP liquidity inside the June 4th pool. That is 81.59% of the vault's $6.2 million total and the dominant single position in the bottleneck. Concentration is not malice. In healthy markets, a curator like Gamey Labs is a leading indicator. They read structures earlier. They allocate sharper. The risk is not that they are present. The risk is that they are present at one date, in one pool, with one expiry. This makes a clean exit impossible. If Gamey Labs rotates large pieces out at maturity, the rotation itself becomes the bank-run signal everyone else reads. They cannot quietly cash out without telling the market what they think. They need a bridge to a position that explains itself. A quant counter is fair to acknowledge. If Gamey Labs exits and rFLR keeps flowing, the mechanical effect is a sharp APY spike for the remaining liquidity providers. That can attract fresh capital quickly. It would soften the visible drain. It does not fix the underlying problem. Capital pulled in by a mechanical APY spike is the same mercenary capital that just left with a different wallet. The carousel restarts. The trust deficit on Flair's curve does not. Same capital, 5 contexts. The same $5 million reads as 47% of one pool, 6% of the Firelight Vault, and 1% of total Flair DeFi TVL. As the lens widens, the concentration thins. Player 2. Firelight, the catalyst. Firelight is the asset issuer behind stXRP. They also hold the 2 levers that can turn a mercenary position into a sticky one. Lever 1 is Phase 2, the activation of a real operational base yield. This is not speculation about what Firelight might ship. Their public roadmap places Phase 2 live in Q2 2026. Q2 ends June 30th, which is 26 days after the maturity. The moment base APY moves above zero without rFLR carrying it, allocators have a number to plug into a model. That is the difference between a farm and an investment. Lever 2 is Firelight Points tokenomics. Conversion path, cap, distribution logic, vesting. Without those, the points are a bet on goodwill. With them, they are a claim, and claims survive incentive cliffs because they have their own gravity. Either lever, shipped before June 4th, lays a floor. Both shipped, and the bottleneck becomes a foundation. Neither shipped, and Firelight enters the date with nothing under it but the rFLR subsidy, which has its own fixed sunset on July 26th. Player 3. Spectra, the architect of the curve. Spectra runs the protocol. Their position is the most interesting because it contains a contradiction. The architecture for a proper duration yield curve is already there. 7 stXRP maturities exist in parallel on Spectra, from September 2026 to December 2027. 6 of them are dry. The June 4th pool alone holds 99.13% of all stXRP liquidity across the curve. 10.64 million of a $10.74 million total. The incentive design has funneled allocation into a single golden pool, and the rest of the curve sits as proof of architecture without participation. Spectra reaches the crossroads with an unusual problem. The building is built, the rooms are empty, and the heating is on in only one room. After June 4th, they choose. They can reset another single golden pool with the next batch of rFLR subsidies, which simply moves the cliff 6 months out. Or they can redirect incentives across multiple expiry pools and finally seed the curve they already built. That decision is not just operational. It is the difference between Spectra as an event venue and Spectra as a yield curve. The first is rentable. The second is investable. Player 4. The Flare Foundation, the central bank. FIP.16 has passed, which reduces Flare's general inflation. That is a macro shift, and it is not the same layer as the rFLR that subsidizes Spectra and stXRP. The relevant layer is the Facets Incentive Program, a $2.2 billion FLR allocation distributed via rFLR across 13 monthly epochs from July 2025, with the program ending an estimated July 26, 2026. Spectra sits explicitly inside the program's yield derivatives category. As of today, the subsidy machine that carries mercenary liquidity into the June 4th pool is still running. That is why June 4th is a tactical event, not a structural one. rFLR keeps flowing for 7 weeks after the pool matures. What changes on June 4th is the location of the capital. What changes on July 26th is the reward itself. The Foundation has 2 choices for the post-July world. Extend rFLR through a new program, redirecting a portion of the estimated 19.4 billion FLR still sitting in the cross-chain incentives pool, or ship a new attractor mechanism, Fire Vault, or MEV capture, or another vehicle that replaces subsidy with operational logic. Neither path has been telegraphed. 2 readings are coherent. Either the Foundation is preparing the post-July sequence and the May coordination claim is the first step, or the gap between program end and next mechanism becomes real on July 26th, and capital clears in two waves, a local one at the maturity, a systemic one at the program's sunset. The June 4th maturity is a rehearsal for the July 26th question. The question has not been answered yet. Player 5, the stXRP and FXRP holders, the mercenary capital. The fifth player is plural. It is the retail liquidity providers chasing APY without distinguishing rFLR subsidy from operational return. And it is the smart money on the sideline, waiting for slippage and arbitrage at the cliff. Both groups read the same screen. One sees solidity and stays. The other sees an exit auction and gets ready. The mercenary character of this capital is the reason the date matters. Capital that came for the reward leaves when the reward thins. There is a counter-image to mercenary speed. Lazy capital, whales who miss the date, retail that never reads its position, allocations that sit by inertia rather than by conviction. Lazy capital can absorb one cliff, sometimes two. It cannot survive sustained zero yield. Inertia delays the rotation. It does not cancel it. Markets at maturity dates do not move on the average view. They move on the marginal seller and the marginal buyer. Whoever decides first sets the price for everyone who decides second. Section 3. Proof of Alpha. Yes, we are. There is one statement Firelight has already made publicly. On March 30th, 2026, the question was put on X. Are Flare, Firelight, and Spectra coordinating the May transition from artificial to organic liquidity? The Firelight reply was, yes, we are. The closing line in the same thread, also public. The curve is ready when you are. This is not a leak. It is a public question asked openly and a public answer given on the record. The arbitrage was in asking. Before March 30th, a soft landing was speculation about backstage coordination. After it, the coordination is a stated commitment that can be measured against on-chain delivery. Yes, we are is not architecture. It is the entry of the claim into the public timeline. The promise has been on the record for 6 weeks as of this writing. Every day without delivery costs more than the day before. Section 4. 4 scenarios. The structure forces 4 outcomes, from structural maturity to systemic exit. The bull case. The bridge. Firelight activates Phase 2 operational yield, or ships binding points tokenomics before June 4th. One lever is enough to create gravity. Spectra publicly redirects incentives across multiple curve maturities. Gami Labs rotates into the new curve because the economic logic now holds without pure subsidy. The bottleneck resolves into Flare's first piece of unsubsidized structural depth. The base case, the prolongation. The status quo buys time. Spectra and the Foundation orchestrate a new golden pool, bridging the June 4th maturity directly to the estimated July 26th sunset of the Facets Incentive Program. rFLR rewards continue to subsidize the position for exactly 52 days. No operational yield is shipped, but Gami Labs rolls its capital over because the rent is still being paid. The $11 million standoff is not resolved. It is formally rescheduled for late July. The drift case, the inertia. The date passes without structural delivery and without a formal rFLR extension. Yet, no panic ensues. Lazy capital absorbs the cliff. Whales miss the maturity date, and allocations sit at zero yield out of pure inertia. Gami Labs cannot exit cleanly without moving the market, so it bleeds out slowly over weeks. This scenario hurts the narrative most, while looking benign on the screen. Nothing visible breaks, and nothing visible gets built. The cliff case, the exit. The date hits without a bridge and without an extension. Base APY remains zero. The market clears. Mercenary capital acts exactly as incentivized. It leaves. Gami Labs executes a hard, visible rotation out of stXRP. A mechanical APY spike pulls in some temporary replacement capital, but the net flow is a brutal drain. The heavier damage is the signal sent to the next cohort of curators. Depth on flare is rented, occasion-bound, and not structural. Structural read. The base case is the most likely outcome because it is the path of least coordination cost. Extending a single pool with existing rFLR emissions to align with the July 26th macro sunset requires zero new engineering and minimal back-channel coordination. The bull case requires synchronized technical delivery under a deadline. The cliff case requires active negligence. The drift case requires smart money to forget its calendar. Markets facing coordination problems usually default to the path of least resistance. They kick the can down the road. Section 5, where this analysis would be wrong. A thesis is only worth something if you can say what would break it. This one has 4 fracture points, each tied to one of the active actors, each measurable in May. First, if an on-chain verifiable base APY for stXRP emerges before June 4th that is not carried by rFLR, the operational yield argument is settled, and the catalyst lever has been pulled. Second, if Firelight Points receive a binding conversion mechanic with explicit cap and vesting, released before June 4th rather than after, the second pillar of the cliff case is gone. Third, if Spectra publicly redistributes incentives across multiple maturity pools before the date, instead of preparing another single golden pool, the protocol has decided to be a curve. Fourth, if Gami Labs rotates a clean majority of its capital into new stXRP structures without conditions immediately after June 4th. The curator has information, the outside view does not. These tests do not require new information in a month. They will be answered in 4 weeks. Section 6. Architecture over narrative. It is not decisive whether Spectra builds a new golden pool after June 4th or whether Gami Labs distributes capital across a differentiated curve. Both can work in isolation. Both require the foundation to be laid between now and the date. 4 questions May has to answer. Where is base APY? Where is the tokenomics of the points? Where is the curve's incentive redistribution? Where does the large capital sit once it is free? A yes we are is a start. It is not the proof. Markets pay for structures, not for moods. 5 actors, $11 million. 1 date. May is the month where the architecture either gets the allocation it was built for or stays a roadmap nobody drove on. Deliver yield, deliver tokenomics, deliver curve allocation, deliver a bridge. That was Janus Dispatch. Sources, charts, and disclosure are in the published post. If this dispatch sharpened your read, subscribe. Janus Dispatch is at janusthewatcher.substack.com. The long arguments are in the books. The transition sequence, 2 volumes, 1 thesis, the ground is shifting. Book 1, The Proto-Post-National Age. Book 2, The Frame, both available on Amazon, paperback, and Kindle. The dispatches connect them. The books carry the weight. Architecture over narrative.